Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us here once again on Instagram. Hey, I'm Christian LaRoche, sales manager for Waldorf Wine Group, and I'm so glad you could join us here for another Wine Wednesday on Instagram. Thank you as well. We actually had to go back an hour this week. Sorry, I had another commitment. Actually, I was taking part in a very fascinating presentation about solar servers and games, etc., put on by Low Carbon Wayfinding. Check them out. Check them out. Very, very cool website. They host low carbon conversations. Very, very cool. So check it out if you can. Low Carbon Wayfinding. As mentioned, Wine Wednesday, we're back again here. And for those of you who haven't joined us before, I see some of our regulars joining us here. Good to see you, David Lancelot. I'm glad you could be here. Always a pleasure to see you, sir. This is something we started back in May of 2020. Waldorf Wine Group, we pivoted online to bring content at during the start of the pandemic, and kind of did so accidentally. We were kind of outed in the Georgia Straits saying that we're going to be doing this every week, and we thought about doing this maybe from time to time, but no, it was there in print saying that we're doing it every week, so we've been doing it every week, and yeah, we've done over just about over 200 videos consecutive weeks, man. We haven't stopped at it, so what this is it's online content of everything under our Waldorf Wine Group umbrella. For those of you not familiar with us, Waldorf Wine Group, we're a small family-owned importing company. We started back in 1993, and we bring in European wines, and we bring in all sorts of different European wines. We have an incredibly eclectic portfolio. Co-op cellars, small family estates, Cru Classé, Bordeaux chateaux, old school German Rieslings, biodynamic wines, organic wines, natural wines. We've got such a cool wine for you today. This is one of our absolute favorite suppliers. Getting back to actually Waldorf Wine Group, founded by Andy Waldorf back in 1993, still firmly at the helm. We bring wines into BC and Alberta. And this is our way of bringing some online content. We look at wines that are either currently in the market. We look at samples that we're thinking of bringing into the market. We talk about any promos that might be going on, any visits from winery principals, any dinners or promos that we might be having. And the wine that we're doing today, actually, I don't think I could have timed this any better. It's crazy because the wine that we're actually featuring today, I thought, let's do it again because I haven't done this wine for a while. Well, we get an allocation from this winery once a year. That's it. We get one small allocation, and it's in, it's out. You blink, you miss it. These are absolutely some of the most sought after wines in the wine world, and we are so unbelievably proud to be able to bring these wines into British Columbia and Alberta. This is the granddaddy of traditional Rioja wines. It may not be the oldest winery in the Rioja region, but it's light years the most traditional winery going. Let's flip the camera in. I want to show what we're trying today. You probably already know what it is, but this is Lopez de Heredia Vina Cubillo in Jarro in the Rioja Alta. We're checking out the Vina Cubillo, which is one of their single vineyard wines. They're all single vineyard wines at Lopez de Heredia. But yeah, this is such an old school winery, still owned by the same family. Founded back in 1877 by Don Rafael Lopez de Heredia y Landeta. He was born in Chile to Basque parents and moved back to Spain and basically ended up getting involved in war in the 1860s or so. Ended up coming out sort of on the wrong end of the war and had to flee Spain. He ended up going to France and got work in Bayonne in southwest France, and got involved in the wine trade there. And then, of course, in the 1870s, phylloxera hit a lot of Europe. So people were scrambling to find sources of quality wine, which took Don Rafael Lopez de Heredia y Landeta down to Haro, where he basically set up shop in the railway district, the Barrio de la Estación in Haro. We'll pull that up on the Google Earth map in a wee bit. And set up shop producing wine there, and started acquiring land and vineyards. And today, it's still in the hands of the same family, fourth generation. It's Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia, who we've hosted here a number of occasions, including a number of years back. Lopez de Heredia, they joined us here in British Columbia to do the first edition of Top Drop. And we've had them out several times, both Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia and their export manager, Maria Vicente, as well. Had them out, but Maria Jose is, of course, joined by her sister, Mercedes, who is the winemaker, and their brother, Julio Cesar. And they are currently farming 182 hectares of vineyards, all single vineyard wines. These are very, very cool wines, because what they are is they're the ultimate expression of traditional oxidative Rioja winemaking. So the whole specialty of the house is they're not trying to prove a point, trying to make wines just because it's fashionable, because it's cool, because it appeals to certain, market segment. This is the way the family's always made their wines. So the secret is all their wines, red, white, and rosé, they're all long aging in old American oak barrels. So long aged wines. So the wine that we're trying today, this is actually the youngest wine currently available, the youngest red wine rather, currently available from Lopez de Heredia. So this is the 2016 vintage. And what Cubillo is, of course, we mentioned it's a single vineyard wine, but this is what Lopez de Heredia considers their entry-level wine, their Crianza wine. So what this means is, this is their youngest expression of red wine, and they only release it, now. It's an 8-year-old wine. So in Rioja, a Crianza wine basically is any wine that has been barrel aged for at least a year, which is released at least after 2 years after the vintage, but with at least 1 year of barrel aging. That will qualify as a Crianza wine. The next step up above that in terms of the hierarchy of aging would be a Reserva wine, which is, again, it's released 3 years after the harvest, and having had to spend at least, again, 1 year in barrel. If we get up to a Grand Reserva wine, that wine has to be released at least 5 years after the vintage, and has to have spent at least 2 years in barrel. For our Crianza wine for Lopez de Heredia, this wine, their Crianza wine, has spent 3 years in barrel and 3 years in bottle before they even consider releasing it. So technically this is their Crianza wine, but for any other winery in the Rioja region, this will qualify as a Gran Reserva. Think about that. Isn't that crazy? But that's totally a testament to Lopez de Heredia. They like their wines with age on them. And what does that mean for us here in our market? Well, you're able to buy a wine. Now, don't get me wrong. These wines are not inexpensive, but they're not crazy expensive either by any means. Think about the time that a winery has to hang on to all these wines to age them and then release them to market. That's cash flow all tied up. And think of us here as well on the receiving end. many of us, we don't either have the facilities to age a wine to give those added layers of complexity, or we don't have the patience to put our wines away and sit on them for that long. So you're able to buy a wine that comes to market that's already 8 years old, that already has, secondary development of the wine, not just wine in an embryonic, what I like to call a baby fat stage. So there's very few wineries that do that release wines. And Lopez de Heredia has made a specialty of it for all their wines. That being said, though, the wines are what I call a prime example of oxidative winemaking. So what we have here in all the wines, red, white, and even rosé, is a wine that's been aged for a long time in old American oak barrels. And that's important. Why is that important? Okay, when we come to oak barrels, generally what we're either using, by and large, and not exclusively, but by and large, tends to be mostly American oak barrels. The American oak has got a wider grain, and because of that, the staves can be sawed. So it's frankly it's a bit cheaper to produce in that regard. Whereas French oak has a much tighter grain. The wine has to be aged, it has to be split, and it generally has to be aged and seasoned for a while before it's ready to go. And they're two different animals. It depends what you want. The tighter grain of the French oak lends itself more to more of that barrel influence that gives the wine a little bit more wood tannin, maybe a bit more of a backbone for wine stage, and it's probably a little bit more subtle in terms of what flavors it imparts on a wine. Again, too, it also depends on a number of factors: the source of the oak, how high or low do you toast the barrel as well, too, the size of the barrels, how much contact is coming into contact with the fermenting and the aging wine. American oak, as mentioned, it's got a wider grain. It's a little bit more porous, and when it's young, it can impart a little bit more of that diacetyl flavor that if you've ever had one of those big buttery California Chardonnays that has the big toffee and butterscotch flavors, that's the diacetyl. But what Lopez de Heredia does is they're using older oak, so it's lost an awful lot of that diacetyl flavor. They're not trying to impose an oak, fingerprint on the wine. They're not trying to override the fruit flavors. It's there mostly as a supporting mechanism, but mostly what it is they are using it as a neutral aging vessel. But because it's porous, too, it allows microscopic amounts of oxygen to permeate the wine as it ages in its long slumber in those barrels. And that's important because that is the trademark of Lopez de Heredia wines. Long barrel aging for red, white, and rosé wines. And what that tends to do in the red wines, it tends to make the wines a little bit more pale. Think more of those brick-colored wines with starting to fade a little bit. Whereas the white wines, they're not, bright and kind of greeny straw-colored. They take on these more golden, deeper shot colors, a little bit more like, say, apple juice, chicken stock, maple syrup. That's what they look like. They're dark. But the other thing too is the flavor profile is different. In the white wines, of course, if they are aged for a long time in contact with oxygen, they take on a little bit more of like a sherried note to them as well. And that is challenging for some people. With the wines of Lopez de Heredia, I always say, if you're not experienced with the wines, these are very divisive. You're either going to love them or you're going to hate them. A lot of people are not on the fence about these wines. We used to sell these wines years ago through BCLDB signature stores, and the wines, doesn't matter what they get, whether they're white, red, or rosado, screaming high point scores. And you put that on a shelf talker, you put it out on a shelf, And a lot of people would see that and would grab, 95 points. Oh my goodness, I must try this wine, and it sounds great. But for the uninitiated, a lot of these wines could come as a shock because what they are is, because they're long aged, we talked about the white wines being a little bit affected, more like a sort of a sherried style, and quite dry and more developed fruit and more dried fruit character. The red wines, the same thing too. They take on very leathery, more stewed fruit. They're a little lower in alcohol. Like the red wines rarely get above 12.5%, 13% alcohol. And what would end up happening is a lot of consumers who might be used to drinking more opulent wines, like, California Merlot, an Australian GSM, an Argentinian Malbec, like these wines would come as a shock because they're very lean and leathery and dry. They're beautiful wines, but they may not be what people are expecting. And because they're more developed fruit character, they're not bereft of fruit by any means, but think more, I don't want to call it desiccated fruit, but maybe more dry, developed fruit with more secondary flavors and, more developed flavor, more tertiary flavors as well too. Earthy, leathery, those are some of the descriptors you might find in some of the red wines. David, I'm going to get into decanting because that's a bit of a divisive point. And I think it lends itself a little bit to the oxidative winemaking. Because these wines spend so long in barrel, I see a few people joining us here. I'm just going to flip the camera and show what we're trying. We're back in Spain with the granddaddy of traditional Rioja producers. We're back with Lopez de Heredia Vina Cubillo. This is their Crianza wine, although it's aged for 3 years in barrel and 3 years in bottle. For any other winery, as I mentioned, this is the current vintage, and we actually, our allocation just arrived in the warehouse today. It's still clearing customs. It won't be available for a while, so we'll keep you posted. There's not an awful lot to go around. As mentioned, this is their Crianza wine, which by law only needs to spend a year in barrel and a year in bottle before it's released. Lopez de Heredia ages their wine 3 years in barrel, 3 years in bottle before they even consider releasing it. So for any other winery, this would qualify as a Gran Reserva. We're talking about long aging in barrel, and we talk about the micro-oxygenation of the wine as it permeates those old American oak barrels. What happens is, the wine has fruit tannin. The wine has a little bit of wood tannin. Normally what happens is we get that mouth-puckering astringency, like that oversteep tea sensation, when the protein in our saliva comes in contact with the tannins of the wine. Well, what happens is the polymerization of tannins, as this wine is aged in barrel for a long time and in contact with oxygen, the chains of tannins, the polymerizations, they're lengthened. What ends up happening is that really helps to smooth out the sensation of the wine in your mouth, so you do not pick up as much of that mouth puckering astringency from the protein in your saliva. And that's why these wines, even though they're only like 12.5%, 13% alcohol, they're super, super smooth, and they have, layers of flavor. But they take time to develop. And to your point, David, we talk about decanting the wines. What I did with this wine, this has been a divisive point. We've hosted Maria Jose Lopez de Heredia here before, and she is very, very, very firm, saying, do not decant my wines, any of the wines, because what she says is the rapid introduction of oxygen. If you put that wine in a decanter, the rapid introduction of oxygen of that wine going to the decanter will shock the wine, and it'll make it go dumb. So basically what I do with these wines, and look, I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you buy this wine, you want to decant it, go for it. That's perfectly fine. You're more than welcome to do that. What I tend to do with my wine is I open it up and I just pop the cork out, and I've had it open with a little bit of wine in my glass for most of the day. and then just let a small amount get in through that. I know that's not decanting per se. I guess it's like slow oxidation or slow oxygenation rather. But what I do, and this is what Maria Jose recommends, is pour a little bit in your glass and then follow it throughout the meal. Or, in my case, I opened this wine at 10 o'clock in the morning and I've been following it throughout the day just to see how it evolves. I put a little bit of a cover on here because there's oxygen in the glass. But this wine is in no danger of falling off. It's one of those wines that, because it's already been exposed to oxygen in the barrel as well, it's already been, it's oxidative winemaking. This wine will not fall apart. I mean, I could probably keep it in this glass for, several days and it probably wouldn't knock it down that much. But I do like to follow it once it's opened, and see the evolution. Because when I first opened this wine and poured a little bit in the glass and gave it a try, it was quite sullen. The wine was quite shut down. It wasn't offering an awful lot. Very dark, very cedary fruit. Wasn't giving up an awful lot. And I followed it, kind of every hour or two, went back and had just a little sip and a taste just to see what it was doing. And it was really interesting to see how the wine, we talk about the peacock's tail. This wine really opened up throughout the day. It's in a beautiful spot right now, let me tell you. Anyway, we'll get to back to that a little bit later. But as mentioned, Lopez de Heredia, they're farming 182 hectares of vineyards spread over 4 different vineyards around the town of Haro. Their main vineyard is the Tondonia vineyard, which is about 115 hectares, and they bought that back in about 1910, 1913. They bought it from the clergy, and that's their big vineyard, about 115 hectares. They make red wine, white wine, and rosado wine. For those of you asking, you always ask me, here's the deal with these wines. These wines are an ultra strict allocation. We get as much as we can, they'll give us. But the anchor, the backbone of Lopez de Heredia is Tondonia, because it's their biggest vineyard. And that is essentially the anchor wine to any of the orders that we bring in. So currently we're bringing in the 2012 vintage of Vina Tondonia. It's the Reserva wine. We bring that in 750 ml bottles. That's the standard. Bring in a few magnums. We bring in a few 375 ml bottles. The other single vineyard Reserva that we bring in is Vina Bosconia. Far less is produced. That's only about a 25 hectare vineyard. And so we get far less of that wine. Cubillo is a 28 hectare vineyard. Hey, they could produce a Gran Reserva, but they choose to offer this wine as their Crianza wine. Like I said, 3 years in barrel, 3 years in bottle. They want something that's a little bit more fruit driven, but still has lots of complexity going on. And I got to tell you, this wine has really been going from strength to strength in the last few vintages. Gee whiz, I got to tell you, it is a sleeper in terms of value. All these wines are just off the charts in terms of price quality value. If you like the style, like I said, it's a very old school wine. You have to be careful if you are a private wine shop or a restaurant. You have to be careful who you offer these wines to. Like I said, if your customers like big, opulent fruit bombs, this might not be their cup of tea. If you like old school Bordeaux, Burgundy, Barolo, like old school European wines, you're going to love these wines. They are just, like I said, so elegant, so complex. This is on the left bank of the Ebro River in the Rioja Alta. We'll pull up the Google Earth maps in a moment here. You know what? No, we're going to pull the Google Earth maps up right now and show you what we're dealing with here. Let's just get the bottle out of shot. As mentioned, our latest allocation just arrived. It'll be out in probably a few weeks. Wines are just clearing customs as we speak. And they've got to come out of our agent warehouse, which is going to be shut down from February 1st to February 9th for their yearly inventory. But here we are. We're in central northern Spain. Just up here, we're basically about 77 kilometers straight south of Bilbao along the Ebro River. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to pull up I borrowed the This is from Wine Folly. I borrowed the Rioja map here. So here's the Rioja. Of course, we're straddling the Ebro River here that flows all across northern Spain. Goes all the way out to the Mediterranean. We featured that not too long ago on Waldorf Wine Wednesday. This is the southeast portion of the Rioja. This used to be called the Rioja Baja. More garnacha dominated wines, a little higher in alcohol, more fruit driven. Now it's called the Rioja Oriental. And then in the central section, northern central section of the Rioja, this is the Basque region of the Rioja. This is the Rioja Alavesa, sort of halfway between Logroño and Haro. And then Haro to the northwest, this is the Rioja Alta, centered around the town of Haro. Haro itself, really cool town, and I highly recommend it. You should visit it if you ever get the chance. It's a total wine lover's destination. The town is here. It's a little bit of a hilltop town. And then when I go to Haro, I stay up in here. There's a converted convent called Los Agostinos that has been converted into a hotel. And it's a fantastic place to stay. I highly recommend it. But just north of the town here is the railway district just off of the highway and just south of the river Ebro as well. And this is what we call the Barrio del Estación. A lot of wineries set up shop here because it's right next to the railway. It was a great place to transport your wine. And this is a fantastic place to visit because it's a real juxtaposition of wineries and styles. Down here to the south is Cune, Compañía Vinícola del Norte de España. Hey, we used to import those guys many moons ago. Great wines here in Rioja Alta and Rioja Alavesa. Then across the road is Bodegas Muga, another traditional winery. Just north of them is Gomez Cruzado. I believe they're Mexican-owned now, actually, another traditional winery. Right north of them is Bodegas La Rioja Alta, who I believe are still in the market. I haven't seen them around for a while. And then on the northern tip here, this is a very, very modern winery. This is Bodegas Roda. It's a Catalan couple who run it. Stainless steel computers and the like. And then, of course, right next door is our favorite. Yeah, Lopez de Heredia, Vina Tondonia. This is, like I said, the right on the western side of the Avenida Vizcaya. And it's like a labyrinth of cellars. I'm going to pull it up in a moment. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll pull it up right now, show you where we're at. This will give you an idea of the winery. There's Maria Jose herself. We hosted her here a number of years ago, first edition of Top Drop. And as I said, 182 hectares of vineyards, all organically farmed, natural fermentations and long aging in old American oak in the labyrinth of cellars. This gives you an idea. And this is, you can actually still see this. This is the winery, the Swiss Tower, and it still appears on the front label. Yeah, it's still there. So true to its roots. This is kind of cool too because you've got this labyrinth of cellars that goes all the way out to the banks of the river. When they want to cool the cellars, all they do is they just open the doors and let the air flow in. And the other thing too is this is a little bit more than just a winery. Some people call it like a museum of wine. Well, it's a functioning museum. But the other thing too is we talk about terroir in the vineyard and also the surrounding region. Well, I would argue that the winery itself, they don't do anything to change the environment here. They will not move a cobweb or anything. You can see this sort of penicillin yeast and cobwebs that grows there. This is the tasting room cellar. Yeah, those are the cobwebs. It's such a cool place. But I would almost argue, I'm just going to pull back here a little bit and get the bottle back in the shot. But they keep it at a constant temperature, constant humidity. And because of that ambient environment in the winery, of course, all the wines age there for so long. Yeah, David, it is terroir on the ceiling. I call it like the microbiome of the winery because, of course, that's the living, breathing environment that those wines are aging in. Lopez de Heredia is crazy cool because, not only do they have, like I said, such an old school subterranean cellar, they have their own coopers. They make all their own barrels and vats and harvest tools and harvest baskets. The other thing is, get this. You want to talk about attention to detail and tying up resources and funds. Lopez de Heredia currently has in use right now over 14,000 barrels and vats. It's crazy. Put that in perspective. It's a Fort Knox of wines. They've got so many vintages aging there at any given time. And think about that. My running joke is you can tell this winery is not owned by an insurance company or a bank because they would never put up with aging that much wine for that long in there. And, as I mentioned before, in the world of fine wine, premium fine wine, Lopez de Heredia is an anomaly. I mean, the wines are not inexpensive, but they're not crazy expensive either. I mean, when you talk about high-end Bordeaux and Burgundy and some of the prices that they fetch for what these wines go for, these are pieces of history, living history that we can still get and with built-in aging to them and for not very much money, relatively speaking. As mentioned, textbook examples of oxidative winemaking, exposure to oxygen, frequent racking, bottled without filtration. 2016 wine that we're trying today, great vintage in Rioja. 2016 started off a little bit wet and cool was the spring. Then we had a warm summer, but we got some more rain in early September, which helped to lengthen the harvest a little bit. So the wines are, what I love about these 2016 wines is the combination of freshness and balance. That's what I keep finding. The other thing I like about the wine too, I'm just going to mention from a practical point of view, really great back labels, very, very descriptive. They tell you what's going on. This wine is a blend of 65% Tempranillo, 25% Garnacho, and the remainder is 10% Mazuelo and Graciano. As mentioned, 3 years in old American oak barrels, 3 years in bottle before they even consider releasing the wine. So, you know what? I think this is a great time to give the wine a try. Oh, I'll mention, as mentioned, the wines have just arrived. Our yearly allocation has just arrived. So for the Viña Tondoña Reserva, we're on the 2012 vintage. For the Viña Bosconia Reserva, we're on the 2012 vintage. For Cubillo, we're on the 2016 vintage. For Gravonia White, we're on the 2016 vintage. There is very little. Everybody asks us for the white and the rosado. Public service announcement, Lopez de Heredia is currently not offering any of the rosado wine. They took a 3-4 year break on it. There's way too much demand for the wine. They're letting their inventories build up again. White wines, we get tiny amounts. And I kid you not, the white wines come in 6-packs. We get maybe 5 or 6 packs of any of that for the entire province. So, we have to protect that for our best customers, of course. We do our best, but it's frustrating for us as well, too. We try to get as much of the wine, but we're always going to be disappointing people, especially on the white wines, and some of the higher end, bottlings, the Reservas and, Gran Reservas. We get eyedropper quantities. So if you're interested in any of the wines, drop me a line, DM me here, or shoot me an email at christian@waldorfwine.com. And that's Christian, KHRISTIAN @waldorfwine.com. we're going to do our best to get you some wine. But again, there's not an awful lot to go around. And again, we have to protect our best customers, those who order the most wine from us year in, year out. Always get, the best pickings. That's just how it works. That's how it has to work. But let's give this wine a try and see where we're at. As mentioned, this wine was, we just pulled the cork out and let air in through the bottle. Did a very slow oxygenation of the wine, and we've just been following it in the glass. Medium deep ruby. There's a little bit of development going on the rim, as you'd expect of a wine. 3 years in barrel, 3 years in bottle. This is an 8-year-old wine now. But like I said, when I first opened the wine this morning, it was very, very primary. It wasn't showing much of anything, just deep, deep, dark, very cedary fruit. So let's give the wine a swirl and a sniffy sniff. Ooh, all right, earthy. I'm getting a lot of almost like that sort of old books and leather, red berries, definitely a bit of that cedary note too, quite smoky as well. Here's my story. I tell you this every time. I used to live in Spain back in 1992. I had a 1-year contract working there down in Andalusia, in Sevilla. I got a job working there. And there was a lot of construction going on, and the red bricks that they were building a lot of the houses and buildings with, they'd leave it out in the blazing hot Andalusian sun, when they would take their siestas in the afternoon. And those bricks would get this really hot, high-toned, earthy smell to it. I always time travel in my glass when I'm drinking Lopez de Heredia, red wines especially. The other thing is, as a kid, I used to work in my parents' garden, and we would put out bags of peat moss. Again, same deal. This has really got a strong, earthy, kind of funky, peat mossy smell to it as well. I used to be, when I lived in Ottawa back in the day, I worked as a product consultant for LCBO Vintages, and I was also a member of the National Capital Sommelier Guild. And we did a tasting with Lopez de Heredia at the National Gallery of Canada. We did wines going back to 1964. And I vowed that if I ever got to be in the wine business, I would make it my mission to represent and work with Lopez de Heredia wines. I made that come true. So I'm very, very proud to have said to have been able to done that. So, cheers to Lopez de Heredia, and cheers for helping me on my wine journey. That's for sure. Let's get back to the wine. Sorry, I digressed a little bit, but it's important. It means an awful lot to me. There's that earthiness again too. Let's give the wine a taste and see where we're at. Love it. Super fine grained tannins, medium bodied, but just so silky. Has that lovely earthiness, but it's also super fresh on the finish. Beautiful juicy acidity in there too. I'm just gonna have one more sip. Wow. Beautifully complex already. That wine, like I said, needs some food right now. And again, I keep it simple. Maybe some lamb chops with some rosemary and garlic, maybe a little bit of manchego cheese, maybe some albondigas. Nothing too fancy, but I love that just straight up. This is a wine too that'll keep, for a wine that's already 8 years old. This has got enough juicy acidity and plenty of fruit left too. You could age this wine easily another 10, 12, 15 years, depending how cool your cellar is. But this is a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is Lopez de Heredia Vina Cubillo. This is the current vintage available for sale. It just arrived in our warehouse today. Still clearing customs as we speak. It should be available in a couple of weeks. All the wines are in now from Lopez de Heredia. Viña Tondonia Reserva in 375 ml, 750 ml, and Magnums, Viña Bosconia, Got a little bit of the Gravonia White. There's a few other wines in there too, but they're pretty much all already spoken for. Drop us a line if you're interested. We'll try to get you on the allocation. If possible, you can DM me here or drop me an email at christian@waldorfwine.com. And that's Christian, Christian. Yeah, like I said, nobody makes them like this. These are the granddaddies of traditional Rioja. I really love what this family does. And what I love about them too is they're not trying to make a statement. They just, like this is the wine, this is the style that we like, this is the style we've always made, and we're going to keep making wine this way. So it's kind of a case of what's old is new again. There's so much demand for these wines. I mean, we could sell, 4 or 5 times the wines that we get on the allocation. But hey, we're happy to take what we can get, and to bring these great wines here that, if you're a wine lover, you really should. You owe it to yourself to discover these wines. They're a hand sell. Like I said, they're not everybody's cup of tea. But if you like this style of wine, they'll take you to heaven. That's for darn sure. That's about it for this week. What else can I tell you? A lot of wines coming in. We just got in, like I said, Lopez de Heredia. We just got a reload of our Chacoli as well, another Spanish wine from the Basque region. Apate Chacoli, a little bit more, has just come in. So if you want to try a really cool, dry, slightly spritzy, Basque wine, that's your tapas, white wine, seafood wine. That's your sushi wine. Lots going on. What else? We're just waiting for some more German wines to arrive. Got more of our old, Schwab Kiva wines coming in. The new vintage of the Erziger Würzgarten, Auslese is about to arrive. The new vintage is 2002. That's coming in shortly. Getting in a little bit more of our Saumur Les Pouches, single vineyard dry Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley that we've been carrying for years. So lots of cool wines in the pipeline. As mentioned, don't forget, if you are a retailer or a restaurateur, Container World in Richmond is doing their inventory count between February 1st, February 9th. Get ordering your wines now. Do not delay. Otherwise, there will be a break in the action. Okay, so the other thing I'll mention too, if you have not done so already, please do follow us on Instagram. We're up to 560 followers and growing. We'd love to have you join us here. Lots of cool wines we're going to be featuring here, lots to talk about, and we'd love to have you join us. So, until next week, we'll take care. See you soon. I'm Christian with Waldorf Wine Group, sales manager here for Waldorf Wine Group in British Columbia. Take care. Bye for now.